Hello, my dear friends. How are you doing? Hope you are having an amazing day and not having to deal with drama. Ready for new stories I have for you today? Let's go to the first one. And don't forget to listen to the end of the story, guys, to hear my insights. Enjoy the stories. And don't forget to like and subscribe. And of course, don't forget to leave a comment. This story is long, messy, and honestly something I never thought I'd be living through, let alone posting about online. But here I am, completely drained emotionally and mentally, and apparently now also the villain of the family for doing something I thought was standing up for myself. I'm a 29-year-old woman. Up until a year and a half ago, I was engaged to a man named Jason, 32 male. We were together for almost 5 years. We started dating in our mid-20s, moved in together after a year, got engaged after 3. I genuinely thought he was the love of my life. We'd picked out rings together, talked about starting a family, made joint bank accounts, the whole picture. My younger sister, Emily, 27 female, has always been complicated. Growing up, she was the pretty one, the golden child, the one my parents praised for everything. I was the smart one, which basically meant I was the one who did chores quietly and got good grades while she got away with anything, because she had a good heart, and of course the looks. Our parents constantly compared us. They used to say, "I need to take more care about my looks, otherwise I won't find a husband," while they always said, "Oh, Emily is so pretty, she won't have difficulties finding a husband." That's why they were shocked when I started dating my future husband, as he was really a catch every parent would wish for their daughter. This pattern followed us into adulthood. Emily floated from job to job, had toxic relationships, borrowed money from our parents constantly. Meanwhile, I built a stable life. I worked, saved, planned my wedding, and tried not to resent the fact that she got away with everything. Jason and Emily got along well. She was his soon-to-be sister-in-law, and I was happy that he included her in things. She'd sometimes joke, "If you ever screw up, I'll steal him." I used to laugh. I thought she was being playful. Spoiler alert, she wasn't. 6 weeks before my wedding, I came home early from a weekend work trip. I hadn't told Jason because I wanted to surprise him. I planned to bring his favorite takeout and spend the night cuddling on the couch, decompressing together before the wedding stress kicked in. When I walked into our bedroom, I found him and Emily in bed together. Not just in bed, having sex. I'll spare you the worst details, but trust me when I say it wasn't something that could be explained away. Clothes everywhere, blankets everywhere, her purse on my nightstand, his boxers on the floor. I froze for a second. Then I dropped the food on the floor and said, "What the hell?" They both screamed. He jumped out of bed. She tried to cover herself. Jason started sputtering excuses, something about being drunk, being confused, that it only happened once. It wasn't once. I later found out they'd been sleeping together for months. It started after my bachelorette party when Jason gave Emily a ride home. They kept it going behind my back, in my house, in my bed. I left that night and never looked back. I called off the wedding. I cut Jason off completely. As for Emily, I blocked her on everything. My parents begged me not to make a scene or blow up the family. They said Emily made a mistake and that I should find it in my heart to forgive. I told them to lose my number for a while. Over the next year, I worked on rebuilding my life. I went to therapy. I moved to a new apartment. I changed jobs. I grieved the future I thought I'd have. But slowly, I started to feel like myself again. Then came the real punch to the gut. Emily and Jason got engaged. My parents were thrilled. They called me and said, "Well, at least this will heal the family. Isn't it better that they're together now instead of sneaking around?" Excuse me? Better for who? I haven't spoken to Emily since I found her in my bed, but oh well, I was invited to the wedding. The audacity. I told my parents I wouldn't attend the wedding. Why would I sit there and watch my sister marry the man I was supposed to marry? But they pushed, and pushed, and pushed. They said if I didn't go, people would ask questions. They said it would be bad optics for the family, and Emily's future family if I wasn't there. That I needed to move on, and be mature. My mother even said, "Don't be selfish. Emily deserves a happy day." I thought about it for weeks. My therapist told me to consider what would give me the most closure, not what would make everyone else comfortable. So finally, I agreed to go. But I knew I wasn't going just to sit there quietly and smile. The wedding was last month. It was held at the same venue Jason and I had booked. Literally the same place. They even kept the same floral arrangements I picked because it saved them time. I showed up wearing a dark green dress, not the color they asked for. I wasn't in the wedding party, but they had the nerve to send me a dress code request. I ignored it. Everyone was there. Their friends, family, people from our hometown. I spent the whole ceremony feeling like I was watching a surreal, out-of-body experience. Emily walked down the aisle in the same song Jason and I had picked for my wedding. I kept thinking, is this real? Am I really living this? At the reception, my parents acted like everything was fine. They smiled, introduced me to people, and told everyone how happy they are their daughter found the love of her life. I sat at my table quietly. I watched the speeches. I watched them toast to new beginnings. I watched my sister kiss the man I once believed was the love of my life, while my mother dabbed her eyes with a tissue like it was some beautiful love story. That's when I made a decision. When the floor opened for toasts, I stood up. I didn't plan it beforehand. It was pure instinct. I took the microphone. I smiled. And then I said, for those of you who don't know me, I'm the bride's sister. And fun fact, I used to be the groom's fiance. Yep, that's right. Jason and I were engaged before he met Emily. Well, actually, not before. During. Because 6 weeks before our wedding, I came home early from a trip and caught these two in bed together. In my house. In my bed. But hey, some love stories are just unconventional, right? So let's raise a glass to real love because it even happens with your own sister's fiance. The room went silent. Dead silent. Jason's parents looked horrified. My parents looked like they were going to vomit. I set the microphone down, picked up my clutch, and walked out. I just couldn't stand to be part of this circus anymore. Since then, my phone has exploded. My parents are furious. They've called me every day saying I ruined Emily's wedding and embarrassed the family. They said I should have kept it private and that I acted like trash. My mother told me I sabotaged Emily's happiness out of jealousy. My father said I looked bitter and small. Emily and Jason are apparently not speaking to a lot of their guests now because so many people had no idea about the affair. I've been called cruel, vindictive, a homewrecker of a different kind. But here's the thing. If I had kept quiet, everyone would have just smiled and pretended this was normal. No one would have known the truth. I'd have spent the rest of my life being the sister who wasn't mature enough to show up, while they painted themselves as the happy couple who just happened to fall in love. I wanted the truth out there. I wanted them to own what they did, not just in whispers behind closed doors, but publicly. And yeah, maybe it wasn't classy. Maybe it wasn't the high road. But after what they did to me, after the months of gaslighting, the demands for me to show up and smile like it was fine. So Reddit, am I the a-hole for exposing my sister and ex-fiancé at their wedding and ruining their big day? Not the a-hole. They didn't just betray OP. They built an entire wedding celebration on top of her trauma. Same venue, same flowers, same damn song. That wasn't a wedding. It was a victory lap for betrayal. OP didn't ruin the wedding. She told the truth. If they wanted a scandal-free event, maybe they shouldn't have committed one of the most disgusting family betrayals imaginable. Actions have consequences, and sometimes those consequences come with a microphone. And now let's hear community's opinion. Your parents didn't want you there because they cared about you. They wanted you there to make their messed up family narrative look normal. You were supposed to sit quietly and play the part of the gracious, forgiving sister, so no one would ask questions. Instead, you chose honesty over optics. Good for you. Family isn't about swallowing glass so other people can eat cake. Not the a-hole. That wasn't a toast. That was a TED Talk and boundary setting, and I'm here for it. You gave them exactly what they asked for. A toast. You just added a little honesty to the champagne. The people calling you bitter. They're mad because you popped the fantasy bubble. You didn't ruin a wedding. You gave them the truth they were trying to bury. Not the a-hole. Stay unbothered. Let me get this straight. They steal your fiancé, reuse your wedding plans, demand you attend to keep up appearances. And when you don't quietly eat the humiliation, you're the problem? Nah. That's textbook scapegoat / golden child family dynamics. You didn't blow up the family. They lit the fuse. You just refused to smother the smoke with silence. Not the a-hole. You handled it better than most would. Male 27, dad 61, had this friend Jay, male 54. Growing up, Jay was like an uncle to me. He taught me a lot of things about the world and was a huge mentor. Jay has been married to May, female 51, for 30 years. But around 21 years ago, Jay had an affair due to May's sterility issues, from which an illegitimate child, Kay, was born. Jay and May solved their issues and remain happily married. For 18 years, Jay paid child support, but other than that, wanted absolutely nothing to do with Kay. Yet, 3 years ago when Kay was diagnosed with cancer, he tried to contact Kay, but at that point Kay refused. Also, Jay had a brother who's got 2 boys. Jay told me personally he never really approved of his sister-in-law, but they get along fine. Sadly, Jay passed away last week. This wasn't unexpected news because he's been desperately fighting cancer for the past 3 years. I want to be transparent and admit that I was the one who convinced him to finally get checked, and was there every step of the way with him. Used all my connections as a resident to get him the best treatment possible. A lot of people showed up at the funeral, including Kay and Jay's affair partner. It was heartwarming seeing so many people pay their respects, but May wasn't pleased about seeing Kay and the affair partner there. And after the funeral, as Jay's executor, May told everyone what was in his will. 40% of his estate with May, 20% to his nephews, 16 and 19, 5%, certain items and memorabilia, to his friends, my dad included. Rest to me. This caused a bit of outrage with 3 people in particular: Kay, the affair partner, and the sister-in-law. The sister-in-law said her nephew should get more. Her eldest and Jay's brother quickly shut her down though. From what Jay has told me about her, she's the kind of person to go to court over this, but his brother seemed reasonable and understanding, so hopefully nothing happens. Kay was livid. He went on about how dare Jay exclude him from his will when he couldn't even bother being a father, etc. He basically went on a tirade criticizing a man at his funeral. He also threatened to sue everyone. At this point, everyone got incredibly irritated, because in my country, if he sues, he is likely to at least get something. So I stepped in and made him an offer. I'll give him about 5% in cash right now, and he leaves everyone alone. We don't see his face ever again. His reply was that I can go duck myself, that I'm an entitled a-hole who doesn't deserve anything from Jay, and that he's gonna sue for everything. I told him that he is welcome to sue, but if he does, I'll try my damnedest to make sure he receives nothing and also has to pay for our court fees. So that was that at the funeral. I'm waiting for him to sue at this point. But the thing is, today while hanging out with my friends, I told the story. I thought it would be funny or entertaining. Thing is, a few of my friends disagreed. They called Jay an a-hole for abandoning Kay for 21 years, and me one for fighting for money I don't need and denying Kay his birthright. Even though there are a lot of people behaving in very volatile ways here, I'm actually going to vote no a-holes, except maybe the sister-in-law. Kay deserves every bit of their anger. They were abandoned by their cheating father their entire lives. I think it wouldn't hurt you to acknowledge Kay's pain and Jay's crappy behavior. It might go a long way towards healing things. Jay is entitled to split his money however he pleased. Kay doesn't really have a leg to stand on legally. You're entitled to receive what was allocated to you by Jay. Jay was an a-hole. He didn't screw around on his wife because of fertility issues. He did it because that's what a-holes do. Then he abandoned his kid as well. And you think the child doesn't have a right to be furious? Jay made his will and can do what he wants, but you're the a-hole for acting like Kay has no right to be upset. You got the money, so congratulations, but you could at least acknowledge what an a-hole Jay was. You're the a-hole thinking it was funny or entertaining that Jay was such an a-hole that it was not enough for him to be a jerk to his kid in life, but also in death. I have 5 kids. My 4th child, Jack, fake name, recently turned 16. For my oldest 3, after they got their driver's licenses, I went and picked out a car with them. The cars had to be used but in good condition, and they cost around $10,000 each. With my oldest sons, a bit less, and my daughters a bit more. Inflation. My parents have always preferred Jack over the other kids. We have had several fights about this over the years, and it has really strained my relationship with my parents. For my older children's 16th birthdays, They gave the kids cards with a few $100s in them, which is a pretty standard grandparent gift, and I never said a word about it. For Jack's birthday, they gave him a check for $5,000. While I didn't say anything at the party, I was pretty surprised and annoyed. When I talked to them afterwards about the disparity, they said they had just sold some land and had liquid cash at hand. We fought, and they called me an entitled brat. Nothing new under the sun. When we were getting ready to go look at cars, I told Jack to bring his check from his grandparents. He asked why, and I said because I would pay for half the car and his grandparents were paying for the other half. Jack was upset because he thought the $5,000 was just for him, and that I paid for the cars for all his older siblings in their entirety, so I'm treating him unfairly. I pointed out that they didn't get $5,000 from their grandparents, so it would even out. He said, 2 wrongs don't make a right. I won't transcribe the entire argument, but he was extremely upset and said I ruined his birthday, and now he isn't even sure if he wants a car. To which I said that's fine, and if he changes his mind, he can let me know. He also called my parents, who rang me and called me an a-hole for trying to steal their gift. We had a pretty intense fight, where I said some things one probably shouldn't say to one's parents. They said depriving one son to try and keep everything even between all kids is cruel and neurotic. They asked if I would take money out of their college funds if they got scholarships. I said that wasn't remotely the same, and they called me a hypocrite. Edit. I was trying to make things easier for myself, and that was wrong. I talked to Jack about why it was wrong for his grandparents to give him that check, and why it was wrong for him to accept it. We voided it and sent it back, and I gave him $300. I'll pay for the car in its entirety. Edit 2. My parents don't like how much the other kids look like my wife. I only have 1 daughter and 4 sons. My oldest is the spitting image of my wife, just a little paler. He has her curls and face shape and is short like she is. My daughter and my youngest have her skin color. My second son looks like a mix between us. My parents used to like him the most, but then Jack was born, and he looks just like me except for his eyes. He's pale and taller than my wife and has my features. He just has her eyes. So he became their favorite. Info. Why do you use so many words but avoid saying your parents are R? And they spoil Jack because he's the most white passing, while your other kids have more melanin. Why are you trying to punish your son into some semblance of equity, instead of teaching and persuading him that the RBS your parents are pulling is toxic and horrible? You need to deal with the underlying reasons here, not just balance the math equation. Everyone sucks here. He's right that a present from someone else shouldn't change your commitment. You're going to give him less than you had to his siblings. The gift is from you, not your parents. You're essentially indicating you're only willing to give him half of what you gave the others. If you're worried about them thinking it's unfair, point them to the grandparents. His grandparents suck for this. They created this situation with an extravagant gift they didn't give the other children. They're entirely to blame. Explain to the other kid what happened. No need to shield your parents in this case. Your son isn't much at fault here, though even at 16, I would hope he would realize how duck the situation is. If he wanted to go above and beyond, he would willingly offer his $5,000, but that's up to him. So, your R parents favor the whitest child, and you've been allowing these blatant R near your wife and kids for 20 years? Cutting them off is long overdue, and you're the a-hole for not doing it sooner. However, you need to have an honest talk with your son about the favoritism and how he's simply encouraging the R towards his mother and siblings by accepting the money. You need to apologize to all your kids for what you've put them through by maintaining your parents in their lives. Not the a-hole for this particular issue, but you're the a-hole in so many other ways. So my 43 female neighbors, 89 male and 83 female, who we'll just call M and F, recently passed, and I inherited all of their belongings, including their house. So a little bit of context. I grew up in this neighborhood, and for as long as I can remember, M and F were always around. They ended up being like grandparents to me. They'd spend holidays and birthdays with us, gave us presents, and even made toys for my childhood cat. Recently, within the month, they both passed away. M died from what we assume is old age, and F from heartbreak a couple days later. M and F don't have any children together. They have children from previous marriages, and that's that. A little while ago, however, due to money problems, they had to sell M's three-wheel motorcycle. One of M's son, 51 male, who we'll call Paul, who hardly speaks to M, said, "Stop selling all of my inheritance," on top of never calling or visiting them unless he needs something. As a child, I always told M and F that I loved their house. It's a one-bedroom, one-bath house with a cute porch and swing out back, along with 2 small sheds and a tiny painting studio M built for F. I loved how small it was and how homey it felt. I'd hear all the time from them, "Oh well, OP says she loves our house," whenever they were upset because they were slowing down on the upkeep of the house because of their age, which we did help with when we had the chance. My brothers and dad would always go over and help them with housework. So after the argument with Paul about them selling his inheritance, I guess they took it as taking him out of the will, which no one knew about. It wasn't until they passed that we found out they left the house to me. As you can probably assume, Paul was livid. He claimed he needed the house to sell it so he could keep living well. The house in its condition was about $65,000 at most, which, yes, is a lot of money. Saying he quit his job because he was going to live off of that money. I won't have much of a use for the house right now, but now I plan on fixing it up and renting it out. But he said I should just let him live there for free now, since he doesn't have the money anymore. I obviously said no. Our families got into a huge argument over this, because he never came around until he needed something. He lives in Ohio, and we live in Pennsylvania, so it's not like they were states away. A visit every now and then wasn't as big of a hassle as he made it seem, especially for his dad. Anyways, I'm now getting threats from him and his wife saying they're going to sue me because they think I pressured M and F into taking him off their will and putting me as the sole beneficiary, and is saying I stole his inheritance. So am I the a-hole? Paul does not seem financially responsible whatsoever. He should have never quit his job, even if he was getting this hypothetical $65,000 from selling the house. It's good money, but it's not the kind of money people can retire with and live off of for decades more. Not the a-hole. Threaten to get a restraining order if they don't leave you alone. Coordinate with the executor and secure the property and its contents, and then let Paul and his wife try to take this up with the courts. If it's just the $65,000 property, it's probably not worth enough for a lawyer to take on spec, and they don't sound like they've got the money to hire a lawyer. In the short term, I'd move the contents of the home into a storage facility and get some security cameras. Paul seems like he's not going to handle this well. Not the a-hole. Paul is being a greedy git. Stand your ground, and since he's threatened legal action, direct him to the lawyer for the estate. M and F recognized who their real friends and chosen family were, and Paul was not part of that. He ducked around and found out by acting like a vulture. So, my parents are rich. And by rich, I mean rich, old money rich. They are also pretentious as hell and not good people. Back in the 80s, before I was born, they hired a then 16-year-old undocumented girl to be a maid. By the time I was born in '94, she was head housekeeper. Also, she was documented by then. She was the only constant presence in my life. My parents were the definition of absent, and I had a revolving door of nannies. This lady was the one who did most of the actual child rearing when it comes to me. My parents treated her horribly. Before she got married, she was basically working 24/7 since she lived in our house. After she got married, she would have to be in before 6 a.m. and didn't leave until 10 or 11 p.m. She had one day off a week, and if my parents were home, they usually called on her to stay on her day off too. She was also criminally underpaid. She was very grateful to them because they helped her get her visa and all. So even when I encouraged her to find other opportunities, she would refuse. After leaving home for college, I would often ask my parents to borrow her, mostly to give her some time off. I also made sure to pay her. I went to college, graduated, and started working 2 years ago. This year, I bought my own house. Then I asked her to come work for me. I promised her 4 workday weeks, 4 times what she is making at my parents' house, a month off vacation, unlimited PTO, and a 9 to 7 workday with a very light workload. She accepted. Now my parents are very upset with me. She has been with them for almost 40 years, almost 30 of those as a head housekeeper. Now the staff is floundering and it became a problem to them. I wouldn't have felt like an a-hole at all if it wasn't for 2 things. 1. My parents are in their 60s and 70s, and they are in poor health. This has put a lot of stress on them, causing my dad to get worse. 2. I was already borrowing her for 3 or 4 days a week, and just asking her to stay home. Also, the words in parentheses are what my parents use. I in no way condone their use, nor do I see her as an object. She was and still is closer to a mother to me than an employee. If this is true, then it is also literally true. That makes your parents criminals. I'm not a lawyer. Your parents can afford to hire someone, not a replacement for this housekeeper, but to find and vet a reliable replacement for this housekeeper. Suggest that to them. Definitely not the a-hole. Not the a-hole. They can definitely afford to replace her if they're willing to pay a good wage and reasonable benefits. Anyone with management experience in the hospitality industry would be able to fill the spot. If they want someone too vulnerable and inexperienced to seek appropriate compensation who they can underpay, though, I guess it will be hard to find a skilled enough replacement, yeah. You've developed something incredibly rare amongst, and often reviled by, the mega wealthy, a conscience. Don't let their guilty braying talk you into ignoring it. You're doing what you know is right. That causes your parents mild inconvenience, so they're trying to make their problem into your problem. Except they wouldn't have a problem at all if they'd treated their housekeeper like a human being. You did, and she immediately took the offer, like any sane person would.